on. So again, welcome. It is the 13th of April, Monday night. This is the Grassroots webinar. We're going to be talking about some interesting scenarios. I got a bunch of clips just to share with you. Most of them are challenges, so we'll be looking at various ways that people challenge for the ball, some interesting different kinds of scenarios that we're going to look at this evening, hopefully to learn from. So I'm going to go through the considerations just briefly for challenges, but do know that not every single thing we're going to look at this evening is a challenge. It might also be something else. So if we're talking about considerations later on, the considerations we're about to look at really only are relevant to challenges. So again, when we're talking about challenges, there are four primary considerations we want to be thinking about as we look at the clips this evening and we're talking about potential misconduct. We want to be framing our discussion with the following four items. One is the mode of contact. If you've been on these calls before, you've heard me say that. Mode of contact is the part of the body that a guilty player uses when making a challenge. The next part is the point of contact. The point of contact is where on the body of the person who received the challenge it hit them. So for example, if I punch somebody in the face, the mode of contact would be my fist. The point of contact would be their face. It's the easiest way to remember it. Mode of contact is what a guilty party uses to make the contact. If it's a slide tackle, it might be the studs, it might be the top of the foot, it might be the shin, any number of things that could be used as a mode of contact. The point of contact is where on the body of the person who received the challenge it hit. So again, things we want to be sensitive to. For mode of contact, it's going to be hard surfaces. Are we worried about the studs more than we're worried about the top of the foot? The answer is yes. The cleats, the studs are significantly harder and can do more damage if a challenge is made with them than the top of the foot. When we're talking about upper body challenges, are we more worried about an elbow or the palm of the hand? An elbow is going to do a lot more damage than the palm of a hand. So those are things we think about a little bit. For point of contact, we're thinking about sensitive parts of the body. The top of the foot might hurt a little bit, but it's not going to endanger the safety of the opponent, whereas contact to the Achilles or to the knee might very well make a difference between an injury and not being injured. Contact to the side of the foot versus the ankle. If contact takes the side of the foot, the shoe is going to absorb some of that. The leg is not going to bend, which means potential injury is not as significant. Versus if you hit the ankle, that ankle might bend or break. Therefore, the ankle is more dangerous than the side of the foot. So mode of contact, point of contact, two primary features. Force is something we need to think a lot about, particularly if we're thinking about a red card. The difference between a reckless challenge and serious foul play for excessive force is largely predicated on the amount of force used. You might have the same point of contact and mode of contact, but the amount of force being used may dictate whether or not it's a yellow card or a red card. So it's going to be less likely you have a red card unless there's a significant amount of force, but we will see some variances to that or some exceptions to that. In fact, one this evening that we'll have a look at. And then the last thing we're going to look at is shape of body. Shape of the body when a player makes a challenge helps us to understand more things like mode of contact and force. A good example would be if their entire body is up off the ground versus sliding on the ground, that means there's a lot more force involved. The amount of force you have to use to fly through the air versus sliding on the ground is significantly higher. Same goes for the amount of force that's going to be leveled onto your opponent. If you're flying through the air, there's nothing to slow you down. If you're sliding on the ground is going to absorb some of your speed. So the shape of the body versus the ground. Shape of body, is the leg straight or is the leg bent? A straight leg is going to do more damage than a bent leg will do if you're making a challenge. So those are the kinds of things we think about. So as we go through and we see some of these videos this evening, when we're discussing the different clips and when you're making your decisions, I want you to be thinking about these four considerations in particular. Please take a moment to screenshot this, take a picture of it, whatever you'd like to do, so that when we move on from the screen and we're just looking at clips, we're able to talk about these four things in particular. So I'm going to leave this screen up for a minute. and ask if anybody has any questions at this time on these 4 considerations before we move on. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to head and move us on. I'm going to get us out of this and go on to the clips that we want to take a look at. All right, so here's our first one. I'll play it several times and then pause it on our moment of truth. Oops. One more time in real speed. And then one more time, slowed down a bit. All right, so I'm going to take a moment here. I'm going to launch a poll, and I want to see what everybody's initial decision is here. A few more seconds for people to vote. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share the results now. We had 12% say no card, 62% say yellow card, 13% say red card, serious foul play, and another 13% say red card, violent conduct. So this is an interesting clip because there's a lot that we can discuss here and a lot that we can learn from. So the first thing that we have to think about and consider in this, I'm going to stop sharing the poll results here. The first thing that we have to stop and consider here is how far after the whistle this happens. And I know it's a little hard to tell, but you can see here, the referee has already blown the whistle. He's pointed, he's signaled. So at this point, a foul has been called. He's already blown the whistle. And now watch how much longer play continues, or not play continues, but how much time elapses between the referee blowing the whistle and the guilty party here. So that's one factor we have to think about, is a lot of time has passed here between when the referee blows the whistle and when this player makes this very unnecessary contact. The second thing we have to think about is the fact that the ball's not in play here, but even if it was, the player's kicked the ball away. He's not making any effort to play the ball, and he just steps on his foot there. So for those of you who say there's no card here, we need to do something with this. That having no card here is not acceptable. This player has come and stepped on a foot or stomped on a foot, depending on how you want to call it or how you want to describe it, pardon me, well after the whistle has been blown. That's a problem for us no matter what. So we need to have some level of misconduct here. The discussion point really is going to be between a yellow card and a red card. Now, for those of you who had red card for serious foul play, this is an important learning moment for you. The difference between serious foul play and violent conduct is serious foul play can only exist when a challenge is being made for the ball. So serious foul play is when somebody uses excessive force or something of that nature when challenging for the ball. If a player is not challenging for a ball and is guilty of a red card offense, it's most likely going to be violent conduct. So if you're going to give a red card in this scenario, it's important to understand that the red card is going to be for violent conduct, not for serious foul play, because this player is not making an effort to play the ball here. He's not challenging for a ball when he commits this offense, which means it's not serious foul play. So an important learning point from there. So the next thing then we have to discuss is this a yellow card or is this a red card? Now, this clip in particular generated a lot of interesting discussion last year. And so I personally, right at the very beginning, thought this was a yellow card as well. That was my opinion the first time I saw it. And the learning point for me and the learning point for us now with this clip has to do with how far outside of normal play this challenge was. There's not a lot of force in it, but he does come and put his studs down. The reason the answer for this is red card, violent conduct, which that is the answer, is a red card, violent conduct, is because of how far after the ball goes away that this happens. The ball has not been in play since the referee blew the whistle right here. And this player then comes over, jumps up, and steps on a player's, we'll call it foot, ankle, probably a little bit of both. The reason this gets escalated to a red card is because of how far after the whistle blows and the fact that the ball is not anywhere close to it. This is not a player who is making an attempt to play a ball. This is just a player who's sticking his studs into somebody well after the whistle's been blown for no other reason than to stick him a little bit. And so the answer here officially is a red card for violent conduct. And this is clearly deliberate. So a couple players here say the ball or the player has done it deliberately. He looks down at the ankle. Absolutely, this is a deliberate action. The player clearly does this on purpose. He knows the ball's gone. That's why he stops and slows up. There's nothing in it, but he looks down and boom. Very deliberate, very much on purpose. This needs to be a red card for violent conduct. So we had a question here, isn't it deliberate retaliation? Not sure what the retaliation would be for. This player hadn't done anything. He was just standing there. And there's no real worry about why somebody does something. So we had a question here about, isn't this deliberate retaliation? Doesn't matter if it's retaliation or not. It doesn't matter why he did it. The intent of the player is something we actually need to stop thinking about when we're making misconduct decisions. We don't really care why the player did it. All we want to evaluate is what did the player actually do. And in this case, the ball is gone, the whistle's been blown, the play is dead, and a player takes 3 or 4 steps, jumps up in the air, and puts the foot down on the top of the foot with the studs. Completely unnecessary, and it's a clear action of violent conduct. So question here, would the consideration be more for point of contact of the ankle versus the top of the foot? That is correct. So at this point, the question that was asked is, are we more worried about top of foot or the ankle? The answer is ankle. So the ankle we have to be far more concerned about. In this scenario, if this were live play and we saw this player just come down on the top of the foot like that when trying to play for a ball, we'd probably go for a yellow card. Everything about this suggests yellow card except for the time that elapses between when the ball is no longer in play and when the player does it. That takes it outside of a normal football play and what escalates us to a red card. So we had a question here. Are you saying intent is no longer a concern? That is correct. It is impossible for us to judge intent. Only the person who's inside their own brain can know why somebody does something. So intent is not something that we think about anymore in soccer. Where this comes the most difficult, of course, is with handball, because we have something like deliberate. That is difficult, but that's why a lot of the considerations that we have now with handball, as we've talked about the last couple of webinars we've done, have really broken down. Did the player put their hands out to their sides deliberately versus did they handle the ball deliberately? So much of our considerations now when we look at handball have to do with what did the player do with their arms in relation to their body versus did they try to deliberately handle a ball. It's impossible for us to know that. And so instead we look at, did they deliberately move their arm? Did they move their arm to the side as a natural playing motion, or did they move their arm out unnaturally? the additional movement, the position of the arms away from the body, all those things give us clues and allow us to assume that an action was deliberate, or at least put it together without having to know the intent of the player. Good question here. Would you play the ball from the red card foul, or would you play it from the other foul? The referee had already blown the whistle and awarded a foul to the team in black. And so when that happens, once you blow the whistle, whatever the restart was will always be the restart, no matter what happens after that. So in this case, the referee has blown the whistle for a foul in favor of the black team. And after awarding a foul, a player from the black team does this. So we would send off this player in black here and still award the free kick to the team in black, because that was the original decision. Question here is a center referee. If you didn't see the action, but you saw the result of the orange player fall to the ground in pain, what do you suggest? A lot of it depends on the scenario, the game that you're in, and whether or not you have a fourth official. So an important aspect of this clip was the presence of the fourth official. So the referee doesn't have a great look at this because the player is shielding where he makes contact and how he makes contact with the rest of the body. So the referee is not going to have a great angle to see that. The fourth official does. So if you have a fourth official, of course, we would expect the fourth official to come in and help with getting this correct. If you don't see it, then unfortunately you can't send somebody off for this. We don't want you guessing. We don't want you making up decisions if you've not seen them clearly. So if you don't see this, you see the player go down, what I would suggest is walking over, talk to the player in orange, empathize with him, ask him what happened, apologize to them that you missed it, and then go to this player in black and say, I don't know what happened just now, but it sure seems like you might have stepped on that guy's foot. I would strongly suggest you not do it again. But you can't take an action against a player if you've not seen it. Very good question. So a question here, are we still carding the player who stepped on the orange player? 100%. That's the whole point of this discussion, is we're going to have a red card to the player here in black. Question here, what if the initial foul is outside the penalty area and the stomping is inside the penalty area? That is irrelevant. The spot of the initial foul, if you've already blown the whistle, is where the restart happens. Another question, if you give a card, do you take away the foul that happened before? Folks, pay attention, please, a little bit more closely. I've said this about 5 times now. Once you blow the whistle to award a foul, that cannot change. You will always still restart based on your original decision. Anything that happens subsequent to that can be disciplined with misconduct, but your restart will always be for the original reason that you blew the whistle. So if the ball goes out of play for a throw-in and somebody punches somebody in the face, you're going to red card somebody for the punch in the face, but then you're still going to have the throw-in because the ball was not in play at the time that the incident happened. If the ball is not in play, then whatever caused it to be out of play is your restart, no matter what happens. Doesn't matter the severity of it. Doesn't matter how many red cards you have, yellow cards, it doesn't matter. When the ball goes out of play for a foul, for a throw-in, for a goal, for a goal kick, it doesn't matter for what. You deal with whatever happens after the ball went out of play, and then you restart with the same restart it would have been. Any other questions on this one? Somebody says, clarify, you may want to clarify, you can send off the player if the fourth official sees it. Of course, if anybody on the crew sees it and can give the referee that information, then yes, you absolutely can send a player off. But if nobody on the crew sees it, we don't want to make it up. A question here, if the whistle is not blown, do you restart based on the more serious foul, but you initially saw the orange push black? I would suggest, that's a good question, if this same scenario happens, but the referee has not yet blown the whistle when the stomp happens, I would still say we award the first foul. That's going to be similar to things like, potential advantage, wait and see. There's a lot of different things like that. And so what I would suggest you do is always come back to the original foul. Question here, could you caution 34 for delay because he kicked the ball away? You could. I wouldn't recommend you do that. That's just punitive at that point, particularly once he gets stomped on. So I don't think there's any need to sanction this whatsoever. You have to remember when we're talking about delaying the restart for kicking balls away and stuff like that, we only really want to sanction that with a yellow card when some sort of advantage has been taken away from the other team. If this team in black here is trying to pick up the ball to play quick, to do a quick restart, and that player kicks the ball away, now, yes, the action of kicking that ball away has had some sort of material impact on the opposing team, and therefore you should caution them. But in this case, nobody's trying to play quick. They're going to drop back in. Notice here the team in black has nobody to play the ball to. So there's not going to be any quick restart. There's no reason to sanction this player here. All right, great discussion. That was almost 20 minutes of conversation on one clip. But like I said before we started with this one, a heck of a lot that we can talk about in this clip. So good conversation. On to the next one. I'm going to skip number 2 on purpose. All right, we'll watch that one again. And for those of you that might have a little bit spotty connection here, give you the slow motion. One more time in slow motion. All right, and then one last time in real speed so you can remember. All right, having looked at it a couple of times now, I'm going to relaunch the poll here. See what you got. A few more seconds. All right. Here's our results. So we're split sort of a little bit. We got a number of people on yellow card. We have about a third of the room on no card, about 20% saying serious foul play. For the handful of people who voted for a red card for violent conduct, please remember the considerations that we talked about earlier. If somebody commits an offense while in the act of playing the ball, you can't have violent conduct. Violent conduct is only when somebody does something when not in the act of playing the ball. This player was clearly in the act of attempting to play the ball, and so this would not be a violent conduct scenario. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing here, and we're going to talk through a couple of different things here with this clip in particular. So we'll start with the decision, and then we'll talk about some warning signs. So for those of you who voted for yellow card, you are correct. This is a textbook reckless challenge. So a number of you said red card. I'm going to talk about first why this is not a red card. There's quite a bit of speed in this challenge. There's no doubt about that. The player is running at pace when he makes it. But when you talk about the mode of contact and the point of contact, the mode here is going to probably be, I'm guessing, the shins of the player who committed this offense. But when we talk about shape of body and what that does to force, this is where what we talked about earlier with the bent legs comes into play. So though he makes significant contact with the opponent, he doesn't lead with a locked leg, meaning the leg isn't straight with the studs exposed. If he commits this same challenge with this speed and with this force, but with a leg extended and the leg locked and the studs exposed, then yes, we're going to send this player off. But what makes this just reckless and not a tackle that has endangered the safety of the opponent is primarily that his the mode of contact is the shins, meaning the shin guards. He's used the fronts of his legs to make contact with the opponent here. And the legs are bent, which means a lot of the force is going to get absorbed by the leg bending even further backwards. And you can see it here. He ends up with his legs tucked back behind his butt, not straight out in front of him, which means as he makes contact, his legs bend behind him. And you can also see with that amount of force, his legs bent so much that his body just sort of stopped moving. He didn't go flying through the tackle. He stopped at the point of contact. That is because his legs were bent when he made the contact. So that when we talk about shape of body is a big factor in how the force actually gets absorbed a little bit. Point of contact is to the shins, it looks like, of the opponent. The leg doesn't buckle, the leg doesn't bend. Now, this tackle sure didn't feel good to receive, but it's not endangering the safety of the opponent. And that's why we don't have a red card here. So for folks who had no card, I want to talk about why this is a yellow card. There's a couple of factors. The primary one being there's a consideration in the FIFA considerations. That's the longer set of documents. You can Google that at your convenience if you'd like to look it up. But there's a specific consideration that says, does the guilty player make unfair contact with the opponent after playing the ball? So a lot of people probably thought no card, or if it had been an option, no foul, because this player actually plays the ball first. As you can see here, he actually wins the ball first. But because that consideration of making unfair contact with your opponent after playing the ball, we can still have somebody guilty of an offense after they play the ball. So what that means for us as referees is that constant argument we hear all the time in our games that I got the ball first is actually completely irrelevant. Getting the ball first does not give you the license to do whatever you want after that. So if I toe poke the ball away and then I punch you in the face, I don't get to have free clearance to punch you in the face because I got the ball first. Punching you in the face is unfair contact. The same as this player clattering into his opponent's shins is unfair contact. So when this player wins the ball first but flies through the ball and makes contact with the opponent, that is unfair. And that's why it's a foul. And then we think about the other considerations of the recklessness of this challenge. Which brings me to the warning signs, the things that we have to be thinking about before this even happens to make us think we might have a problem. The first is the fact that when he leaps into the challenge, he actually leaps. So anytime you say the word leap, unless it's an aerial challenge, you might have a problem. So again, when we talk about shape of body, this is a good example of a player who has completely left the ground. He is flying through the air right now. It might be hard to see, but look right here. He doesn't drop down when his leg comes off the ground. His knee stays at the same level it was before, which means at this point, he is completely off the ground flying through the air. To be able to do that, you have to be moving with a lot of force. So anytime you see someone jump into a challenge like this, that needs to raise your level of concern significantly. When we look at the freeze frames here, he's off the ground and he actually doesn't hit the ground again until right there when he makes contact with the ball and the opponent nearly at the same time. So he basically just threw his body into this player. Now, because the mode of contact and the point of contact aren't as severe, we can consider this reckless. But anytime somebody throws their body through the air like that to jump into an opponent's feet with their own feet, we need to show some concern. Now, there was an additional red flag here that more senior referees look for, particularly when we're talking about attacking players, of which this player is one. Anytime someone takes a touch that's too far out or farther out than they expected, the initial reaction or the gut reaction from that player is going to be to try to go and win the ball back. They've taken a bad touch. They're going to try to commit a challenge to win it back. And so when this player takes his next touch, watch how far out it goes and watch how his body language changes. He goes from dribbling the ball at a jogging pace, recognizes he's touched it out too far. Look at the difference between his body language here, which is just jogging, and there. He's leaning forward. He's going at much more speed. So anytime you have a player who takes a touch out too far in front of themselves, that's a warning sign that they might go flying in to try to win it back. So the fact that this player has taken too big of a touch and then leans down and starts to sprint to try to get there needs to be a red flag for us. We need to be paying attention a little bit more closely to the nature of that challenge. So again, at the end of the day, the answer here is we want a yellow card for a reckless challenge. The nature of the challenge does not escalate to excessive force or serious foul play. So therefore, we just have a reckless challenge. So we had a couple of comments here. We talked about what makes it reckless versus careless. Good question here. There was a red card for Sergio Ramos to Messi a few years ago, similar to this, and Sergio did not touch Messi but was sent off for serious foul play, excessive force challenge, despite the fact he did not touch him. So a couple of things. One, the temperature of that game and the temperature of most of the games that we do is very, very significant. El Clasico between Barcelona and Madrid is probably one of the most difficult games in the world to referee, particularly a number of years ago when both teams were at the top. That challenge, I remember it very, very well, was towards the end of the game, and it was directly in front of the technical areas, and it had been a really, really nasty game. And so when Ramos came in for that challenge, the referee felt like to maintain match control, he had to red card Ramos. Technically an inaccurate decision. And if my memory serves, I actually think that red card got overturned. I can't remember exactly. But technically speaking, an inaccurate decision, but what the referee felt he needed to do because Ramos was clearly targeting Messi. There's probably a couple other ways we could reconfigure the description of that red card to make it legitimate, like attempting to hurt an opponent or something like that. But at the end of the day, not a technically accurate decision. So a question here in the same scenario, if red jumps over white to avoid getting clattered, can you call anything? Absolutely, because the rules or the law says trip or attempt to trip, kick or attempt to kick. The attempt by itself can be a foul. If a player has to go way far out of their way to avoid it, then you're probably going to have a foul. Question here, do you ever play advantage in this type of scenario? Definitely not in this type of scenario because the guilty party is the one who goes and gets the ball. But generally speaking, when we're talking about advantage, the higher the risk of the foul, the lower, how do I want to say this? The higher the risk of the foul to a loss of match control means the better the opportunity needs to be for the attacking team if you're not going to call it. So if you have just a simple foul, there's not much risk in not calling it and playing advantage. Sure, you can play advantage, no problem. The more severe the foul is in nature, meaning this kind of challenge in this area of the field, this is a more inflammatory tackle. Unless the ball is going 1v1 to the goalkeeper, which increases the likelihood of the opportunity to score the goal, we probably don't want to give an advantage there because you might lose match control if you don't call a foul right away. So again, the more severe the foul in nature, the better the goal scoring opportunity has to be for you to consider an advantage. Question here, excessive force could have broken the red player's ankle. I don't really think so, because he's gone into the front of them and he's gone into the shins. If he had made this same level of contact to the side of the body, right at the ankle, then I would agree with that completely. But that changes the nature of the point of contact and therefore completely changes the nature of the tackle. So again, that's why mode of contact and point of contact are so important. Where he makes contact with this opponent is not going to feel good, but it's not a part of the body where he's going to endanger his safety. And that's a really, really important question to ask. So a question here, how do you determine unfair contact? What is the criteria for that? That's a very, very good question. This is a hard clip to demonstrate it, but think about the kinds of slide tackles you normally see. If the guilty party, in this case it would be the player in white, initiates the contact with the red player as a result of the challenge, then that would be considered unfair. If contact between the two players happens because the red player initiated it after the tackle, then that would be fair contact. So again, I'm thinking about like a hook slide. When two players are running in the same direction, one player slides, knocks the ball away, and the attacking player continues running forward and makes contact with that foot that was out in front of him after the tackle, that would be considered fair contact. If a player slides and wins the ball, and the player who had it previous runs through that player after the ball goes away and falls down as a result, that player who committed the slide tackle has not done anything wrong. So in this case, the contact after the ball is played was initiated by the white player, which would make it unfair. Had the white player slid this direction downward towards the screen, knocked the ball away, and then the red player, tripped over his feet as he ran by, that would be considered fair contact. I know we're talking about what ifs, but I hope that clarifies that question a little bit. All right, moving on to our next clip. We'll let you watch the replay a couple more times, and I'll try to freeze frame it. It's a difficult one to see clearly. Hopefully that gives you a better sense of the point of contact and the mode of contact there. And then I'm going to go back and let you watch it one more time at full speed. All right. Okay. I'll put the poll up. Let's see what people have here. Few more seconds to get our votes in. All right, I'm going to share our results. So about 2/3 of the room have a red card for serious foul play, and about 25% say a yellow card, presumably for a reckless challenge. So, a couple things here for the folks who have no card. We'll talk about why it's definitely a card. For those of you who say violent conduct, I'll again remind you, any action taken while in an attempt to play the ball, we need to remember that's not violent conduct. So this is a scenario where the ball is relatively in playing distance. One would argue he probably didn't have a great opportunity to play the ball, but this is not an off the ball incident. He is sliding to try to get to the ball when he makes contact. So because the ball is in playing distance and this is an act that normally looks like playing the ball, we would not consider this for violent conduct. So the question then becomes, we have to ask ourselves, what is the difference here between a yellow card and a red card? I'm going to stop sharing the results, get our screen big again. And I freeze framed it here at really what is the crucial moment. And again, I want to talk through the point of contact, the mode of contact, the force, and the shape of the body. So the mode of contact here is the studs. This is the cleats, the bottom of the shoe. The point of contact is the back of the Achilles here. It's up high, it's above the shoe line, it's into the middle of the calf, and probably the heel of the white player there is probably down at the Achilles. So this is a tackle that has come in from behind here, straight leg, studs, into the Achilles with a decent amount of force because he's running to try to chase the ball down. So this here we would expect to be a red card for serious foul play. So again, remember, shape of body. This is a straight leg, which means a lot of force. He slides through it, hits the exposed planted leg of the opponent right on the Achilles. The shape of the body here, the straight leg, but quite honestly, the point of contact and the mode of contact on this one should be enough. Putting the studs into the Achilles like that at speed has the potential to hurt somebody. And so we'd want to have a red card here for serious foul play. Any questions on that analysis? Okay, had somebody say it appears to be toe of foot to right shin force, excessive shaped extended. Not sure what exactly you're trying to say there, but this is a clear example of a player who sticks his studs right into the back of the opponent's leg. That's why I freeze frame it, guys, right at the moment of contact. That's the point right there where the studs hit the back of the shoe or the back of the leg. And you can see it by the way the opponent's leg reacts. So we had a question here, did the referee correct himself after? When we're doing clip analysis like this, we actually don't worry about what the referee did in the game. This is a hard decision to get at speed because you don't know exactly how he got him. So generally speaking, when we're doing clip analysis, we don't worry about the referee in the game. We don't criticize the referee. We don't question the referee because a lot of us on this call here have never refereed games at this level. And if you've never refereed a game at this level, it's hard to understand what's going through your mind. So therefore, we don't criticize referees. We don't even concern ourselves with the decision they made in the game. We just look at the opportunities we have here to learn from it. And we thank this referee for giving us an opportunity to learn. All right, I'm going to move us on to another one. I think this is the one I want. All right, here we go. One more time. All right, we saw it twice. Hopefully that's all we need to see. Not a challenge, an unusual circumstance. What do you have here? Few more seconds to get your votes in. All right. We have about 10% saying no card. We have 54% saying yellow card, about a third of the room saying red card for violent conduct, and 7 people saying red card for serious foul play. So I want to start with the red card for serious foul play. Please remember, as we've discussed a number of times already tonight, that serious foul play is when you're guilty of something when making a challenge for the ball. This player has not made a challenge for the ball. He has kicked the ball at the assistant referee. So therefore, serious foul play is not something that can come into our thought process here. So really the question has to be, is this a yellow card or a red card? And for what? Now, I'm guessing a lot of you who said yellow card are probably thinking this is some some nonverbal form of dissent. He's frustrated at the assistant referee who has called him offside. He's losing 2-1, so he kicks the ball at the assistant referee out of frustration. I hope this never happens to anybody, but if it does, this needs to be a red card every day of the week. This is violent conduct. Throwing something, kicking something at an opponent or at a match official is violent conduct. It says so clear in the laws of the game. This is violent conduct. Doesn't matter how hard he kicked it. Doesn't matter that he hit him or he didn't hit him. If you kick the ball at somebody, particularly a referee, or you throw the ball at them, it doesn't matter if you hit them or not. It's violent conduct. This needs to be a red card if it happens to you. Any questions on that? Couple comments. It's the same as striking the referee just with the ball. That is correct. And it says so in the laws of the game. And Law 12 very clearly says throwing at or kicking the ball at an opponent or a referee. So we got a lot of requests to play it again, which I will do. One more time. This is a player who's knows exactly what he's done. Question here, what if the ball misses the AR? Is it still violent conduct? Yes, absolutely. So Tony Sloss, I'm going to ask you to think about what I just said on the last clip when I said that we don't think about or concern ourselves with what the referee did in the game. I literally just said that on the last clip. We don't concern ourselves, nor do we criticize the referee for what they did in the game. And then if you needed any evidence, look at the smile on his face. He knows exactly what he got away with. That's a player who knows he got away with something. So every day of the week, red card. We need to make sure we're not allowing players to throw the balls at us or kick balls at us. Next clip. Here's the replay of it. One more time, the replay. That's what we're looking for right there. Watch it one more time. All right. Let's see what we have here. I'm going to stop the polling for a second. I want to clarify something since you guys can't hear this. What we're looking at happens after the referee has already blown the whistle, or right as the referee is blowing the whistle. I'm going to relaunch the poll with that information. Have you put in your answer? All right, a few more seconds. All right, 82% have red card for violent conduct, 15% have red card for serious foul play. We're on the right page here. 97% say red card, and you are correct. This is violent conduct, not serious foul play, because it's not in the action of making an attempt to play the ball. So if you look when he stomps on him here, the ball is long gone. At this point, the ball is well aware. And remember, he makes the stomp with the left foot. So after the ball is gone, he comes back and hikes up the leg and stomps down with pressure. So this is clearly a deliberate act. For anybody who thinks, as Ashvin has said, that he thinks they just got tangled up, it's not accidental. This is not accidental. This is a player who is looking down. He raised the leg up, and then he makes a deliberate putting down the foot of pressure with a stomp. You can see it right here. He extends the leg down to make that stomp. This is as deliberate an action as you can get from a player. And this is where knowing players and doing a little bit of research can also help us, because this player does stuff like this all the time. I believe this was his second or third red card of this season, playing for a team for whom this was their third red card of this game. In their first season in the league, they were the most sanctioned team in the league. And so that's where doing our research and being prepared can help us with this. This is a player who looks for opportunities like this regularly. And so we have to be on the lookout for it. There. So a question here. AR called a different foul. Please note the AR is already calling a foul at this point before the stomp happened. The player who's guilty of the stomp was first guilty of holding, pushing, tripping, a number of other things in this moment. And it's that route right there that the AR was reacting to. You can see the flag's already up before the stomp happens. So the stomp happens after. And please also note, from this position, the assistant referee would not be able to and would not be expected to see this stomp, because the body of the player is shielding his view from it. So the AR has no idea what happened here. He just knows that there was a push in the back and a foul. He calls it, and it's the referee's good positioning on this play that allows him to see the additional stomp and react to it right away. Accurate decision from the referee. Well done. All right. We have come to 8 o'clock. It is 8:01. I apologizing for going a little late, but thank you from Cal North and myself for joining us this evening. I hope you had a good night. I hope you have a nice rest of the evening, And thanks again for joining us. Have a good night, folks.